So, folks, we gotta talk about Graham Platner again, right? So this guy, is just kind of obviously the Oppo dump happened. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a video I just put out about it, kind of summarizing my thoughts. It's messy. It's obviously changing quickly, but also it isn't necessarily I don't even know how to put this. It's not up to me. I don't live in Maine. And so one of the big questions on my mind was, while this story obviously has legs and traction in online circles, how much legs and traction does it actually have on the ground in Maine? And it seems to me that a lot of the focus of the Platner campaign is on the actual people who live in Maine. And so I wanted to take a look at how this is being covered in Maine's media, in local media, and what the reaction of locals might be. And so I thought we would check that out because, in part because he had a town hall tonight, and also in part because early this morning he announced, his campaign announced, they did an interview, etc., showing that he had changed the tattoo. He'd gone and had it covered up. And so I thought we would take a look at kind of where things stand now and how this story is going on, happening on the ground for folks in Maine. And I think that that's probably the most relevant place to look, considering they're the people who are actually going to be voting in the primary. So we're going to take a look, right? Here is initially the, I believe this is the interview where he talks about it locally. So this is with CBS News, WGME 13, I believe. Local Maine news.
They really show the breadth of my journey after my time in the service. They go from being more angry and more crude to later on becoming in many ways more disillusioned and more nihilistic, which was around the time that I was posting those. I'd come back from Afghanistan for my last trip in 2018 and had become deeply, deeply disillusioned with American foreign policy, with, I would say, the system at large. And that put me on a path of being incredibly critical and looking for answers in places, not finding them, but my internet comments were me on that journey. But then by 2021, which is when I stopped using Reddit, I had begun to build a much more, I'd begun to rebuild a lot of faith. I began frankly, the benefits of years and years of dealing with my trauma from military service, therapy, becoming a much more open, I think, and understanding person through that personal work. That brought me to a place where I could become finally able to connect with my community and connect with people in the real world in a much more substantial way. And I ceased being disillusioned, and I ceased being nihilistic. And it was the exact same time that I began to build a lot more connections in my community, become far more involved in my community. That was around the time I became the chair of the planning board, got involved with my small dive company, in which I was interacting with a lot more people directly, and my business had begun to succeed. So, yeah, I think that when you go over the arc of it, it shows the arc of a journey that I've gone through. I'm proud of the person I am today. I'm not proud of the person I always was, but I also don't get to be who I am today without that journey.
I want to ask you just about a couple of the other posts real quick. The one about where you asked why black people don't tip. Why did you write that?
Well, if you read the comment thread was the whole point was to ask an uncomfortable question of someone of another race for something that you were wondering. I asked the question.
What about the comment, the post that a lot of people probably find the most offensive, that sexual assault victims, should not drink so much. You know, in essence, you're sort of blaming sexual assault victims for what happened. Your thoughts? I mean, even you must find that somewhat offensive.
Of course. I made that comment in 2013. I had just come out of the infantry, which is, at the time, was all male. My military service, my lived experience in the service, I rarely interacted professionally with women in the service. Within a year of making that comment, I'd been in college at that point. I was going to GW, and I'd become good friends with a number of female veterans, all of whom had stories of sexual assault in the military, all of whom, which entirely changed my mind. And I think you would find, even in my Reddit comments a few years later, I was vehemently, what's the word? I was very clear in that I think military sexual trauma exists and that it needs to be taken seriously and that I find it horrific.
Yeah. The skull, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Before we get to the skull, I do think it's a somewhat salient point that, like, dude came out of a part of the military that they did not allow women to join at that point. And also, Sassy Sasa, I think your point in particular, like, yeah, maybe his black customers recognize the skull because allegedly he would do some bartending with his shirt off, and so that would probably be accounting for some of the non-tips, you know.
I had no idea you were a Marine when you got the skull tattoo. You were in Croatia serving overseas, and you and a bunch of your Marine buddies all got wanted to get the same tattoo, I'm guessing.
Yes.
As a black person from Maine, Graham's racism and sexism is not a surprise. Yeah. Logic also says, I am a USMC vet and have been a tattoo artist for 17 years. This whole thing has been way overblown in my opinion. People are either attacking him disingenuously or making assumptions way beyond what it actually is. You know, I appreciate the point of view of someone who has been in the service and also who has been a tattoo artist. I do appreciate that. I am still figuring out where I stand on this, because all of these things aside, like, it is a difficult pill to swallow that this guy didn't know at some point between when he first got it and now what it meant. I have been reading some of the comments on my YouTube videos about this, and there are a lot of folks in the comments who are like, I didn't know what that symbol was until I watched this video. So it's kind of like, I genuinely, I would assume in 2025 most people know what that symbol means, but I'm finding out even during the live stream where we were doing it, people were like, I had no idea what that was. What is that? And so I'm kind of like, if people are still now figuring out what it is, like, I am full of a lot of indecision on this one, because I think part of the problem is I don't know how much to trust this man. You know, a lot of his history is not in politics and not in the public eye. And whereas Bernie Sanders, if something like this came out about Bernie Sanders, you know, I can't even think of a hypothetical, but like, that man has public service going back like 40 years, you know, like, he's a known quantity in terms of like what he has done for the community. Like, his actions and his words are in alignment. And so it's harder when it comes to someone like Graham Platner, where, like, I don't know this guy from Adam. Like, he just showed up one day with a cool political ad. And so part of me is finding it really difficult to just fall in and be like, yeah, no, guys, trust him. It's totally fine. And it's difficult for me to really, it's difficult for me at all to really roll with that, I guess. So I'm kind of in this boat of like, I want to stay in my lane. I'm not going to do the work to rehab this guy. Like, he's got to put in that work himself. And ultimately, it's not up to me. It's up to the voters in Maine. And I do not envy the position of the voters in Maine when it comes to this primary, to say the least. But we'll see what he has to say here.
Myself and some of the other, it was machine gunners. I was a machine gunner in the Marine Corps. I fought in Fallujah and Ramadi. they were deeply violent places. We were asked to do deeply violent things by our country, and we did them. We took pride in those things. And on my third deployment, myself and some of the machine gunners who had made it through both of those previous deployments, we got a tattoo together. We went ashore and split Croatia. We did what Marines do on liberty. And then we went to a tattoo parlor and we got a tattoo that we picked off the wall because it was a scary looking skull and crossbones. The skull and crossbones is because of what we had done. I mean, there's a reason military units choose skull and crossbones as very regular and popular motifs. I got that tattoo, and then I lived the next 20 years with it. And I will just say, I rejoined the Army with that tattoo. When you join the military, you get screened for hate and gang tattoos. I went to work for the State Department, where I was on the ambassador's security team in Kabul, and I got a full physical where I was screened for gang and hate tattoos. I've been taking my shirt off for 20 straight years. I performed a very public performance of a pop song at my brother's wedding to my sister-in-law, who is Jewish, in front of her entire extended Jewish family. If I had thought at any point along this way that I had a very obvious tattoo that had connotations of Nazism, I would have gotten rid of it. I got rid of it. It has now been covered up. I covered it up last night, actually. When this initially came to me, I did not take this seriously because I have never remotely thought of this in that context. I've had this thing for 20 years and nobody's ever brought it up.
Did you notice similarity after it was pointed out?
Of course. No, after it was pointed out, I mean, it was noted. But I will just say that it's a skull and crossbones. It has a similarity to like lots of skull and crossbones. And skull and crossbones motifs, again, super popular amongst military units, both American and foreign. They're all over the world. I never once thought about it in that context. And the moment it was pointed out to me, I have gotten it covered up because I have been an avowed anti-Nazi since I was a kid. I grew up listening to Dead Kennedys and the Dropkick Murphys. I grew up as like a young punk rock kid. I hate anti-Semitism. I hate Nazism and Nazis. I'm a avowed opponent of fascism. I've got, by the way, 13 years of Reddit comments that can attest to that.
At a certain point, like, dude needs to just like drop the entire. He's got a point
about how worrying it is that nobody in the Army or the State Department flagged that.
Well, yeah, like that's kind of one of the under talked about aspects of this, which is that white supremacism and like Nazism have been casualized and made ordinary to such a degree that like that isn't gonna get caught. And it's also true that like during the time period he's talking about, and I talked about this a little bit the other day, but like, you know, white nationalist tattoos gained prominence in circles outside of white nationalism. You could find like goth girls with like the spider tattoos of like the Aryan Brotherhood on their elbows. And like it wasn't because they were part of the Aryan Brotherhood, right? It sometimes these things break containment in weird ways. And like I guess where I'm finding it difficult, and this is where I've kind of drawn the line for me, is that I find it difficult that he didn't find out about this for almost 20 years, especially given his tendency to like take his shirt off. And it kind of seems like someone should have caught this, like that, and it boggles my mind. It wouldn't be like the most unlikely thing to ever happen, but like it's still pretty unlikely. Now, let's see here. But yeah, I guess to get back to the comment from Nomi Sunrider, thank you for the $5 super chat. It's just become so common to see tattoos like this that like, again, people who don't know what they're looking for or don't care enough to do their job right just glaze right over it.
The idea that I've gone through my whole life this time, knowing that this was the case, but in doing so very public.
Oh no, Jay, the spider web tattoo is directly associated with the Aryan Brotherhood. The idea that, like, you know, white folk in prison gotta stick together. Like, that's... Yep.
I take my shirt off all the time. It's not this isn't a secret. So I find the fact that they're going after me on this to be quite absurd. I will just say, last Thursday, I was in trouble because of my comments about being avowedly anti-fascist, and they wanted to call me a communist. Now they are calling me a fascist and a Nazi. In a very short period of time, it feels to me like they're throwing just everything they've got at the wall. But the moment I realized that people saw this for...
Oh, no, Logic, the spider web tattoo, like, because I looked into this, because when I heard about the spider web tattoo, I was kind of like, wait, really? That is associated with the Aryan Brotherhood. Yeah, in the 1960s, the Aryan Brotherhood adopted the spider web tattoo in prison. And maybe it's gotten wider since then, but like they were like, this is our symbol back in the 1960s. And it was used as like a badge of honor, indicating that they had like killed someone of a minority group. So, you know, that's that is the origin.
For something that I had not seen it for, I've gotten it covered up because I hate Nazism. I hate Nazis. There's no place in our politics.
Yeah, no, spiderweb tattoos in like the 80s and 90s.
I have it on good info that ICE will be showing up in Oakland and San Francisco on Friday.
Oof, Oakland and San Francisco, buckle down. One-Eyed Heathen, thanks for the heads up. People in my town have spiderweb tats. They aren't rare. That's the point I'm making. That is the point oh my gosh. Please, guys, for the love of God, follow me here.
For any of that, and I don't want that stuff connected to me in the slightest.
I was going to ask about that. What do you think about Senate Republicans using all of these posts to their advantage to try and discredit your campaign?
I think it's going to fall flat. I think they're going to run attack ads, but they're going to call me a communist no matter what. They called Hillary Clinton a communist. They call anyone who ever advocates for any sort of beneficial programs for working people a communist.
Well, also keep in mind, Comrade Girl, that ultimately, if we don't live in Maine, we don't really get a say in this. Like, the people in Maine are the ones who are going to cast votes in the primary. And, like, their opinion on this is why I'm doing this particular segment. It's so we can figure out what they're doing, you know? How is this story landing in Maine? And so, like, I think that there's going to be a lot more, maybe a lot more division, maybe not. I don't know where this story is going to go in the near future. So that's kind of why we're doing this.
Or a socialist. That's what they say. And I am absolutely pushing for beneficial programs for working people. I mean, that is the core of my platform. That is why I'm in this race. So
I mean, what's interesting here is that he's actually, instead of contending with the Nazi label or fascist label, he's like, nah, I hate those guys, but everyone's going to call me a communist. So this is all very bizarre, and it's difficult to make sense of for me, but that's why I'm going towards what are people in Maine saying? Because if the people in Maine elect him, we have to contend with this guy being on the national stage.
Yep, that's what they're going to do. Sorry. That is what they are going to do. And it's going to be an attack ad, and it's going to be an attack ad that they were going to make anyways.
Well, that's interesting. Jess Hassan had 39,000 people on his stream. He did a poll asking if you knew before the stream about this tat. Is this tat being a Nazi symbol? 60% did not know what it was. That is... I mean, I got to be honest. That is nuts. I would have guessed 80% would have recognized it. How the hell did those people not know? I mean, keep in mind, like, we on the left live in a bubble where we're more plugged into this shit than most normies, and like a lot more normies watch Hassan.
Can you talk about the conversation you had with your political director when she resigned?
She didn't have one. She sent me a text that said I resigned. I have the text.
Were you surprised?
No, I was not surprised. Not it had been disconnected from this. It had been she was not a good fit on the campaign. That was becoming abundantly clear. And then this happened, and that was the end of that.
You were you still have the.
I wish there was more of a follow-up question on like, what do you mean she wasn't a good fit for the campaign? I would have liked more insight into like what is the falling out here between him and the former campaign person.
Endorsement of Bernie Sanders and others as well. How do you feel about that?
I'm very glad that many politicians who I respect immensely still support what I am doing. And I believe that they support it because they know that this is all nonsense. It is no surprise that these stories dropped within days of DC's chosen candidate getting into this race. So, and they know that. They know what's happening here. And I honestly
Well, Leanne Scott, as far as we know, there's only the one person who has quit his campaign. Everyone else seems to be sticking with him at the moment. You know, if we start seeing a mass exodus of staffers, then I think I don't know. There's a difference between one person leaving and a lot of people leaving.
The outpouring of support that I've gotten from around the state shows that an immense amount of Mainers know that's what's happening. I'm a regular person. This is the political establishment.
Well, Jess, I want to hear him give his side of why she left. Because, like, I can very easily hand wave it away by saying, like, oh, she was a corporate stooge. You know, it was all put in motion before all this. But like,
I must have been living a sheltered
his
life.
take on it.
I am learning about spider tat symbols and other stuff. No joke.
Yeah, I mean, it's again like, you know, and we live in a much.
Besides the swastika, I can't think of a more blatant Nazi tattoo than the death head.
Well, and Clearwatch, me neither. But we also live in a much more information-rich environment than we did in 2007, you know? But that being said, like, you'd think being on Reddit for like 20 years, he would have encountered this. You know, I don't know. It's highly dependent on which information ecosystems you hang out in.
Doing its best to make...
We call them dog whistles because people don't know about them. I mean, that's a good point, Salmon. Like, we are all aware of the dog whistles because, like, part of my job is to sit here and tell you guys, hey, that's a dog whistle. Hey, you guys know the famous Lee Atwater clip of him describing dog whistles and, like, how it gets from saying N-word, N-word, N-word to, like, talking about busing? Like, that's a dog whistle. And most people don't know who Lee Atwater is. You know, like, most people don't know a lot of this shit, and it's kind of like it is hard to wrap my head around as someone who has been I am deep in this information ecosystem. I have been looking up this shit for a long time, but not everyone has done that. And there are people in this chat who don't even know that, you know? And so I'm just kind of like, I can believe it, especially given how many of you guys didn't know what this was and how many people in the comments
4 years and 4 months.
Regarding symbols, the first time I raided into this channel, I was like, why is this woman using the Nazi frog? But I had no idea there were a bunch of people trying to retake ownership of Pepe. Yeah, and like, why should we let the Nazis have an adorable frog whose artist never intended for it to be a Nazi symbol? The Nazis stole that symbol, and fuck if they can have them. You know? Yeah, and that's kind of the thing, right, Moth? Like, it's a believable story for me, but I'm also in the... like he's also a very unknown quantity to me. So it's hard for me to come down hard on his side and in his favor because, like, I don't know him. Yeah, John Sean, folks, we do need to do a segment soon about calling your Senate Democrats. Please don't at me twice, but we do need to do a segment soon about calling your Senate Democrats because they continue to pass through Trump judges despite the government shutdown, and fuck that shit. And if, you know, while we're not doing that segment right now, call your senators, folks, because this is unacceptable. Logic, the tattoo artist veteran. There are far more cryptic symbols than these people come in and try to get in tattoo shops. If he was a secret Nazi or trying to dog whistle, there are many things he would have gotten besides a skull and crossbones. Out of curiosity, is there anything we should keep an eye out for, Logic, that would indicate like a secret Nazi? Because I know the major symbols. I can't even pretend to know the smaller ones.
Sure that people like me, who have lived lives that are sometimes flawed, sometimes complicated, they're going to try to send the message that if you ever attempt to get into power, if you ever attempt to advocate...
Yeah, I really don't like the reality TV show version of Secret Hitler. It's not fun, and I wish all of our major political figures weren't playing it these days.
Advocate for yourself, we will crush you. That's the message they're trying to send. What they don't understand is I don't have the same priorities as they do. My priorities are, quite literally, how do we build a better politics to represent working people? How do we address the housing crisis? How do we address the healthcare crisis? How do we address affordability? How do we address the material needs of working Mainers? That is what I care about. That is what my policy platform is. That is what I talk about. That is what I'm going to continue to be talking about. I'll be very upfront. All of this is existing so we don't talk about the real things that people are dealing with. This is the political establishment trying to fight back, and they are going to fail.
You're referring to Governor Mills getting into the race, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You were have all of the...
Also totally irrelevant to any of the conversations we've been having so far, but I do find it very funny that his tag is flipped up on his shirt and no one told him.
All of this in the last week led to a drop in fundraising or support for your campaign?
No, in fact, our fundraising maintained all the way through the weekend, and we are not seeing a loss of volunteers. So people know what this is. I have an immense amount of faith in Mainers. They're smart people. They're people who know when they're seeing something that looks wrong. They know when they're seeing power going after people who have less power. They know that, and they see this for what it is.
You're a former Marine. You're running as an anti-establishment outsider into politics.
Yes.
I don't know if anyone should really be surprised about some of these posts, considering your background, but also, that's also, as you say, that's not the person you are today.
No, it's not the person I have had a very long journey to become the person I am today. And it is rife with an immense amount of trauma, with an immense amount of struggle, an immense amount of disillusionment and sadness. It is also a story that is one of me figuring it out. It is one of me getting help when I needed help, figuring out that the things that I thought were important in my life, or things that I believed in, that they were wrong or I didn't actually believe in them. It was through...
Some things to look out for: specific crosses, scorpions, moths, roses with a specific amount of thorns, like literally anything. There is also typically a specific art style, typically American traditional. Interesting. Do they try to incorporate like the Nazi numbers or numerology into the tattoos?
All of that I've been able to become a much more open and compassionate...
Well, no, Super Jet Guy, a specific number of thorns. Probably to like represent like 88 or something like that.
...person. I had to learn how to love myself. And that is hard when you're after years of immense violence in the service of something that I no longer even believe in. I don't believe in the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. I think they were pointless. And yet they took up an immense amount of my time and energy, and I took part in an immense...
Oh, yeah, and Story the Bard, two things can be true at once. Two things can be true. One is that this is an oppo dump by the Susan Collins campaign, specifically to try and torpedo him out of the race. That can be true, while also there being some, like, extremely valid criticism of his presentation or his past choices, right? Like, both those things are absolutely true in this circumstance, I think.
Amount of horror.
The 14 words would be one.
In those things. And I struggled with that. I struggle with it still. But if it wasn't for that experience, and if it wasn't for the struggles I had after, I would not have been able to learn the things about myself that I have. And what I've learned about myself, what I've learned about other people, is that we need to be more empathetic. We need to be more compassionate. We need to give people more grace and understand that people are not always who they are now. They are not who they ever were, who they were in the past. People can evolve and become different. And because I know that I have done that, I still hold an immense amount of faith in my heart that we as Americans, we as Mainers, have the opportunity to realize that it is in each other that we need to be finding strength. But in order to do that, we need to find forgiveness.
Are you concerned that these posts are going to keep cropping up over and over again? You said yourself you had a lot of
honestly,
posts.
Well, we released everything. We're putting
Oh shit. Okay, he did release all of the Reddit posts.
Everything out there. This is what there is. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's going to be more in the sense that I don't think the machine's going to stop. I fully expect them to throw everything at us continually. I expect people to lie. I expect people to make things up. I expect people to misrepresent things. I mean, they're already misrepresenting things entirely.
Well, Somniostatic, the Totenkopf is a skull and crossbones. There are a lot of different skull and crossbones variants. The Totenkopf is one of them. But yes, it is a very distinct skull and crossbones.
I expect there will be more of that. What I will say is what has come out, these are the things that I knew about and was at some point I'm going to have to talk about my Reddit history because I'm an elder millennial and I spent 15 years on the internet and I'm sure I said things I don't agree with today. That's not surprising. The tattoo was very surprising. I've had it for 20 years and nobody's brought it up. So that was absolutely out of left field. But again, the moment I realized it, I've gotten it covered up because I don't want anything like that on my body. As to what comes next, I don't know. I will say that whatever...
I will say, we literally did the segment on him yesterday, and I was like, I guess we're going to have to see how fast he gets it covered up, because I knew if I found out about this, I would be, wanting to flay my skin off immediately. And, dude literally got it covered up in, less than 24 hours from when this story dropped.
What comes next is... They started with this because this is what they had. They've thrown this at the wall. It's not scaring me off. I'm not giving up. I'm not going home. In fact, it has galvanized my commitment. So there will be more stuff, I'm sure, that they're going to come after me with. It's all going to be nonsense. And we're going to continue doing what we set out to do, which is to run a different kind of campaign, to build a different kind of politics.
I do think, I do think it would have been a good move to have him cover it up on camera while doing this interview, but, get it tattooed off of him on camera. But, just, I am interested to see how Mainers are going to respond to this. And I'm interested to see how the polling is going to reflect that, all of what just came out over the past week. I don't think that there's any new polling out. This thing was optics poison, to say the least, Velvet.
One that is based around...
I think any you also say, I don't know how you respond better than this. I mean, the true test is time. There isn't really a sufficient way to respond to this outside of immediately getting it covered up, which he did, and then demonstrating change and growth, which that's something that takes time. And I don't know if I don't think, for me personally, the amount of time between now and the primary voting day would be anywhere near a sufficient amount of time, but it remains to be seen if it's going to be sufficient for voters in Maine.
Organizing and letting the people of Maine know that they have far more power than they do in this politics, as long as we work together and as long as we are willing to work together and have hard conversations with each other and find common ground. Because I firmly believe that everybody in the state of Maine has almost everything in common with each other. When the hospital closes, it doesn't matter who you voted for. If you can't afford a roof over your head, it doesn't matter what party you belong to. We have a lot more in common with each other than we think. That's the basis of this campaign, and that's what I'm going to keep pushing.
Okay, pretty decent interview. And Daphne, definitely. I just think that there's a big difference between demonstrating change in regards to your public service versus demonstrating change as regards your posts on Reddit. And like, for someone, when we're talking about whether or not someone is going to be not just a local elected official, but someone who's going to Congress, personally, I would want that change demonstrated in actual governance, in actual elected office, probably on a smaller scale than Congress. But again, not up to me. So let's take a look here. Here is a statement that he made on social media. Here he goes. So it's shorter.
Hey everyone, Grant Platner here. I want to talk to you about something. In 2007, when I was a young infantry sergeant in the Marine Corps, myself and some machine gunners I served in Fallujah and Ramadi with were on our third deployment. We were in a naval vessel and we pulled in for a Liberty port in Split, Croatia. We went ashore to do the thing that young Marines do, which tends to be carousing and sometimes getting tattoos. We wanted to get something that represented our jobs, our service, fighting in Fallujah and Ramadi as machine gunners. We went ashore, we found a tattoo parlor after a fair amount of heavy carousing, and we found a tattoo on the wall, a piece of flash that looked like a terrifying skull and crossbones. We thought it looked cool, and so we got it. I have had this tattoo for the last 18 years. I re-enlisted into the United States Army with this tattoo, where I was screened for hate and gang-related tattoos. I worked for the State Department as a contractor, where I got a full physical, which included screening my tattoos. I've gone through life with this thing, taking my shirt off, having photographs taken, videos taken. I've been very, very open in my life with the fact I had a skull and crossbones on my chest, because that's what I thought it was. It's come to my attention that it has a stark resemblance to a symbol that is used by neo-Nazis. And I want to say that was not the intent at all. And the idea that I've been going around with something like that utterly horrifies me. I know that symbols like this can be incredibly damaging to people, and the idea that I've had it all these years and it could have been read like that is incredibly troubling. I have lived a life dedicated to anti-fascism, anti-racism, and anti-Nazism. I think that racism and anti-Semitism are a long scourge on our society and a long scourge on our politics, and I think it has no place in our world. For that reason, I have gone and gotten it covered up. Last night, I went to a tattoo parlor and I got this to cover up the skull and crossbones. It's a Celtic knot with some imagery around dogs, because my wife Amy and I have two wonderful dogs that we love a lot. This far more represents who I am now than even the skull and crossbones did, which I thought that it was. This has come up because the establishment is trying to throw everything it can at me. It is terrified of what we are trying to build here. Every second we spend talking about a tattoo I got in the Marine Corps is a second we don't talk about Medicare for all. It's a second that we don't talk about raising taxes on the wealthy. It's a second we're not talking about the material struggles of Mainers as they try to scrape through a system that at its core is trying to rob them. And that's why tonight, I'm just going back right out on the road. We're holding a town hall in Ogunquit, where much like I've been doing for the past month, going around the state of Maine, making myself accessible to Mainers in their communities so I can listen to them. I can hear about what it is they need to change in our political system. And that is what I'm going to continue dedicating my time to. Thank you all very much, and I really appreciate your support through all of this. I will say, it is deeply hard for me personally, but all the outpouring of support telling me to stick with it, telling me that this doesn't matter, telling me that this means that the system is scared, it means the world to me. And I want to say thank you to all of you who have done so.
Okay. Now, for those of you who did not get a good look at the tattoo, let's
Up the skull and cross.
Let's pull up, maybe not the video. There are some closer up examples. All right, so this is what he got to cover up the tattoo. Obviously, very quick work to say the least. You can still see some of the nubs on the sides. Again, probably a result of the haste with which this was done. Now, I know a lot of people have been clowning on this design, specifically the fact that, he went from one Nazi symbol to a target-rich environment, which is, other Nordic symbology when it comes to tattoos. Esoteric Nazism borrowed a lot of symbology from a lot of different places on Earth, but most especially Nordic history. So, not the design I would have chosen, but I'm also just here to say, I'm from Scandinavian roots and Norwegian roots, and I grew up with a lot of Celtic knot imagery and dogs and such. I'm very much familiar with this iconography, and it is not always Nazi associated. And there are some people who are saying this is, that this is Fenrir, and Fenrir in particular was used by the Nazis quite a bit in their iconography. But one, don't really know if that's Fenrir, and two, even if it is a depiction not of Fenrir devouring the world or devouring the sun or devouring the moon, as often is depicted, but of, if anything, this would be Fenrir being bound by the chains of Gleipnir, which is different. So I that's not something that I don't think that that's really a basis to go after this guy on. Maine has a huge Celtic culture, and it's not Fenrir. Well, look, that I'm just addressing what folks have been saying online about this. I grew up a lot, again, with this iconography, and I'm just even if it was Fenrir, I don't believe that this association would be, oh, you replaced one Nazi symbol with another. I don't buy that. I do think that this is a cover up. I think it's a sloppy tattoo. I will say that. And Story the Bard, as a resident Mainer, says Maine has a huge Celtic culture, and it's not Fenrir. And yeah. So again, just gotta say, if he wanted to distance himself a little bit more, probably would not have used that iconography, but, it's not the end of the world. Bad tattoo done quickly, which, I'm glad. I would prefer him to get it covered up faster, and I'm sure he would as well, rather than, get it done and look great. It's kind of a time-sensitive task. Let's see here. What about the 1919 on his arm? So I looked into that, and you can see in other videos of him without his shirt on that it's not. Some people have been saying it's 1919, like for the SS or something like that. It's not. Let me see if I can. Yeah, Gayfesh here got a good shot of the actual symbol, which I don't know what this symbol is, but it does not appear to just be a standalone 1919. I don't know what organization this is, but looks like maybe fire axes, perhaps. I'm not sure. I can see 1919 A and C or A and G and 2002, but that's about as much as I can make out. TFC. A lot of you are saying TFC. I don't know what that means. Appalachian Mountain Club? No, I don't know. Okay, people are saying TFC and not elaborating. Oh, yeah. Okay, no, that's... Yes. That is 100% it. TFC, Trail Fixing Collective? Okay, it's for the Appalachian Trail Club. Gotcha. That's what's on the tattoo? Yeah, TFC 2002, looks like. So, yeah, case closed. Molly White has a clearer picture on Blue Sky. Ah, wait, this is literally the exact same picture. I just made it bigger. Tattoos are reference to the Appalachian Mountain Club's White Mountain Trail Crew, formerly known as the Trail Fixing / Fucking Crew, established in 1919, on which Platner worked in 2002. Okay. Yeah, again, there you go. Oh, there you go. Clearer. Apologies for the nipples. Case closed on that one. An environmentalist group in Maine. Okay. White guys in the mountains playing with their axes were all a liability. Yeah, not a Nazi dog whistle. Not the 1919 is not. You can even see on the other side of this, it's established in 1919. Fixing trails and clearing rivers. That's cool. Now, I do want to say, again, the other day I talked a little bit about Bernie Sanders defending Graham Platner. Here is a short interview that Bernie did with Axios that was posted just a couple hours ago. Take a look at that.
I suspect that Graham Platner is not the only American to have gone through a dark period.
Your candidate in Maine running for Senate, Graham Platner, has been subject to a lot of fire and fury, stories of old posts, crude comments about black diners, about rural white people. You said yesterday you are still supporting him. Why?
I am not overly impressed by a squad of media running around saying, what do you think about the tattoo on Graham Platner's chest? Between you and me, there might be one or two more important issues, but let me go there. I'm not Graham's best friend. I met him.
Yeah, Graham is pro-Palestinian.
Several times. We did a rally in Portland, Maine, a great rally. I am impressed by the guy.
And anti-genocide.
This is a guy who will tell you, who has served 4 tours of duty with the United States military. He was in the middle of some heavy-duty combat. He was a machine gunner. That's what you do. You mow down people, you know? He went through some very difficult experiences in the military as a machine gunner, seeing his friends killed. Came out of the military. He will acknowledge, I'm not telling you what he doesn't say, he had PTSD. He went to the VA, and by the way, what he says, they rebuilt his life. All right. He went into a dark period in his life. I suspect that Graham Platner is not the only American to have gone through a dark period. But what he did was he has expressed his darkness on the internet. Probably not a brilliant thing to do. All right. And he said things that are stupid, things that were hurtful. He has apologized for them. And what he says now, and the guy that I saw up on the stage in Portland, Maine, rather a brilliant guy. I mean, really a strong fighter for the working class, very articulate, very smart. And what he has said is, yeah, I went through a dark period. I said stupid things. I am not the person today that I was back then. And I think as a nation, especially given the fact that we have a president who is convicted of 34 felonies, maybe we have to do a little bit of forgiveness.
And that is the extent of Bernie Sanders talking about the tattoo, because obviously this is part of a larger interview. And that's about as much as he wanted to say. All right. Now, one of the things I have been most interested in is the town hall that occurred earlier this evening. I have endeavored my best to try and find video from this event. I have been unable to locate it thus far. If any of you see it pop up on the internet somewhere over the next 24, 48 hours, please send it my way. Let me know. But a town hall in Maine town called Ogunquit, and at the Leavitt Theater or Levitt Theater. And I don't know much about this outside of what has been reported in the media. And there are a couple media stories from local outlets, because remember at the beginning of this, I said I wanted to take a look at, here's what Graham Platner has said. What are people on the ground in Maine saying about this? Where are they at? Let's take a look, right? So here is a short local news report from WGME about the town hall. Let's take a look.
In just about half an hour, Senate candidate Graham Platner will be hosting a town hall in Ogunquit.
Yeah, one of the big questions we're working to answer tonight, will Platner's supporters stay with him, even as his controversial past posts on social media continue to surface? CBS 13's Julia Simone joining us live from Ogunquit.
And Julia, what are people there saying about Platner?
Yeah, guys, people here in Ogunquit say they still support Platner and think he is the best candidate for Senate despite his past online posts. And those posts on Reddit, many made more than a decade ago, cover issues related to race, asking why black people don't tip. Another post was related to sexual assault victims, saying they should, quote, take some responsibility. He admitted today in a one-on-one with CBS 13, the latter comments were offensive, adding his views have since changed. He also showed us a newly adjusted tattoo on his chest, which previously showed a skull and crossbones symbol closely resembling a symbol worn on Nazi uniforms. Platner telling us he got the tattoo in 2007 while on leave during his time in the service.
Okay, just real quick. I know it's a local news outfit, but like, please take out the audio from the background clip you're showing as B-roll.
And he didn't know about its potential Nazi ties. Some people who came out for his town hall today say they still support him and aren't holding his past against him.
Tattoo on his chest doesn't bother me at all. Maybe he made a mistake. Maybe he didn't want it there. We all do things in the past that we kind of regret that we did and wish we could have changed it. But I think a lot worse could happen.
The town hall will be starting in about a half hour, and ahead tonight at 10 and 11, we'll let you know what Platner says. Live in Algonquin, Julia Simone, CBS 13 News. Back to you guys.
Julia, thank you.
So that is kind of the before report. Here is just a short excerpt from what some other folks said. They have one more quote here. Some people came out say they still support him and aren't looking to hold his past online posts against him. Quote, I think he spoke very clearly, honestly, and directly to decisions he made in the past and the comments he had posted on Reddit. And I think he spoke honestly and clearly about how that came from a place where of when he was feeling and living with PTSD and had gone through 4 deployments, coming home and really struggling, Alyssa Drayani, a town hall attendee, said. So that, again, we got 2 posts, obviously. So I took a look at some of the other local outlets. Here's the Bangor Daily News. Graham Platner's mother and a defiant crowd show up for him after a bad week. After Graham Platner's campaign for the U.S. Senate was roiled in the last week by the unearthing of past Reddit posts and his tattoo resembling a Nazi symbol, which, let's be clear here, it is a Nazi symbol. It doesn't resemble a Nazi symbol. It is. A steadfast ally introduced him at a packed Wednesday event. It was his mother, Leslie Harlow, who stood on stage of Ogunquit's Levitt Theater, packed with 500 attendees and another 100 in an overflow area to share stories about her son and his return from overseas military deployments. She acknowledged her son's bad week. She also handed out an old photo that was passed around the theater showing her and Platner standing together outside the U.S. Capitol, adding, "This is who Graham Platner is. My son, Graham Platner, is smart. My son, Graham Platner, is hardworking," Harlow said. "He believes in change and he wants to be part of leading the charge." Applause, laughter, and shouts of approval returned repeatedly as Platner arrived on stage, immediately discussed his recent controversies, and then proceeded with a now familiar stump speech that railed against economic inequality, the healthcare system, and housing costs before he laid out what he would do in Congress if he unseats U.S. Senator Susan Collins of Maine. In response to a question from an audience member mentioning the past week's tumult toward the end of the 90-minute event, Platner said he is ashamed of things he once said, but I am not ashamed of who I am today. He added that he and his wife knew this day was coming when the system was going to do everything it could to crush us. The establishment is spooked, Platner said before nodding to his history as a military veteran, and I'll say this, if they thought this was going to scare me off, they've clearly not spent a lot of time around Marines. The defiant atmosphere was a marked departure from the past week of headlines, which came after Governor Janet Mills entered the primary. His event came hours after he said he had covered up a chest tattoo, so it no longer appeared like an image associated with Nazi police, or also the SS. And, obviously you can see this image here. Let's take a look here. His political director, former state representative Genevieve McDonald, resigned Friday after the old posts came to light, and also told the Bangor Daily News on Tuesday, that's just yesterday, that Platner knew his tattoo was a problem weeks ago, which was something his campaign denied while calling McDonald a liar. The episode has served as the first real test of Platner's campaign since he launched in August. Attendees who filled Ogunquit's Levitt Theater or had to stand outside to listen Wednesday evening, said in interviews his flurry of controversies are not disqualifying. Tom Scontros, a 58-year-old Elliott resident, said he is undecided about who he will support in the primary, but does not think Platner should drop out. He would love it if Platner additionally, quote, took his entire Reddit file and put it out there, unquote. The last week has taught Platner that quote, politics is a nasty, nasty business, unquote, said Eleanor Newton, a 77-year-old Wells resident whose son in Washington, D.C., told her to check out the upstart candidate. Quote, there's a sense of hope with him, she said, and I think he's got the stones to take the beatings he's going to get. And that's, so that's kind of the amount of feedback I can get from this initial appearance post these controversies. His mother has stood with him, and it seems like Mainers are sticking with him at the moment. I think if normies support him, that's fine, but if it's true that he'd known or joked about it for 10 years, that's kind of a problem. Yeah, MLAWs, that's kind of where I'm at. But also, I need corroboration on that story that was posted to Jewish Insider. You know, like there's an element of I need that corroboration from those accounts as well, because if they're without the corroboration, that's just rumors and hearsay. So I want, if I'm going to give more credence to that narrative, I need the corroboration. And that being said, if it is true, holy shit. But regardless of what I think about it, it seems like Mainers are sticking with this guy. And we're going to have to figure out if he does wind up winning the primary and then winning the general. We're going to have to figure out how to deal with this guy in our public discussions. And I guess time is really what's going to tell here. Time is what's going to tell, because the only real thing that can actually demonstrate whether or not this is genuine is time. Halethane spaced us. Maynard here, despite the bad tattoo, gotten in a drunken haze, which I absolutely believe that happened. Graham does not speak like a Nazi. He literally just a guy in every sense of the word. And look, ultimately, it's going to come down to what you guys think, what you folks in Maine think. I still don't have the information I need. I think that what he has done speaks well of the direction he wants to head in, but I'm still not sold on the idea that this guy has to be the next Democratic candidate in the general. You know, I'm not sold on that concept. For me to get anywhere close to that, more time is going to have to pass, like I said, and probably more time than is going to exist between now and the primary date. So that's just where I stand, but it's going to be interesting to see where this race goes, to say the least. Yeah, there are 8 other options in Maine. 8 other folks to pick, but as far as I know, in the primary, Platner was, polling head and shoulders above Susan Collins, and I have to imagine that that puts him with a pretty decent lead over his fellow candidates in the primary. So that's kind of where we're at. It's a very unsatisfying conclusion. We can't tie a neat bow on the end of this one way or the other. That's what I'm saying. They act like he's the end all be all. Yeah, and he might wind up being the end all be all in a general election race. So it's we're gonna see what's gonna happen in Maine. Again, from a Mainer, Janet Mills and Susan Collins are really hated in Maine. The other leaked story was from a known Zionist supporting online mag, so I would need to hear that from more people. Well, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at too. Like Jewish Insider, it's not unheard of for outlets like Jewish Insider to have actual news that they report. But their source in that instance is an anonymous source and from a former acquaintance from 13 years ago. I'm going to need more corroboration on that one. So that's kind of where we're at. I just want to inform you guys where all of the pieces are as they stand right now. And I think I've covered everything that is publicly available at this point in time. So, obviously folks are going to have to figure out where they stand on this. I'm still, I gotta be honest, I'm still very horribly disappointed by this story. And we'll have to see how this shakes out and how the campaigns play out. But yeah, on that note, let's move on.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather around. Twitch and YouTube and switchy streams. All that content is bursting the scenes. Politics, Maine, and plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat Jack.